On our fourth episode of Wilson the VW Bus, I tackled the rest of the sheet metal rust repair on the bus and try to master the art of painting my repairs without making them look like they've been painted. Can it be done? Should it be done? Don't go away. Welcome back to Wilson the VW Bus. I'm your host, Joe Masperry. I'm just a regular old guy living out my existence here in central New Jersey with my family and friends, and this is the story of Wilson, my 1967 pearl white Type 2 split window tin top homebrew camper VW bus. Our story about getting Wilson the VW bus back on the road continues, and now it's August of 2021 in our story. I'm feeling pretty good about the rust repair and metal replacement progress that I'm making in the cargo area of the bus, so I decide to treat myself to a new 3/8-inch mini pneumatic belt air sander that I picked up from Harbor Freight. This is going to make it much easier to grind some of the welds out of the tight areas that I've been working in. I installed the first belt, which is just some sandpaper glued to a small, thin belt, not much wider than the width of your finger. But I must have installed the belt backwards at first because I snapped it within the first 5 seconds. When it flew off, only then did I see there was a directional arrow on the back of the belt. But thankfully, I've got plenty more to go. I grind down most of the welds from the right side of the fore area and then move on to the front of the right rear wheel well replacement. The forward-facing 10 inches or so of the wheel well need to be replaced with a small patch panel that I bought from Wolfsburg West, and it goes in pretty easily. Their patch panels are pretty spot on. I keep working on a larger quarter panel piece next on the right-hand side of the bus that starts at the lower hinge of the rear cargo door and extends halfway through the rear wheel well opening. Overall, it's a pretty easy piece to install, so then I continue my way to the battery tray and a little rust hole by the engine cover on the rear between the taillight and the engine hatch. If there's a cancerous rust hole, it gets cut out and new metal gets welded in place. But I'm not touching any of the light surface rust, and we have lots of that. Now, dents. Let's talk about dents. Wilson has plenty of dents and dings, and it is my intention not to fix them. He's earned them over the past 55 years, and I really want to do is remove the rust so it doesn't disappear altogether. This sounds like blasphemy to most of my friends and family, and anyone who doesn't understand why I want to keep the originality of this vehicle. Everyone keeps asking if I'm going to paint it, because I painted a lot of my motorcycles and cars over the past few years, and quite honestly, I've gotten pretty good at painting, if I do say so myself. And my answer to the question that everyone asks me about the paint is, it has paint already, and most of it is original. The cargo door bottoms are next, and although I have what appears to be some good patch panels, they really aren't lining up that well. If I get the outside of the doors perfect, then the insides are off. And if I get the insides perfect, then the outsides don't line up right. So I compromise. I cut the doors back to where there's some good metal, and I keep cutting back until I have the patch panel fitting nicely in there, with just the right amount of gap between the sides and the bottom of the door. I begin cutting the door away from the hinge side, and I start to get a little resistance from the Sawzall. I think, wow, I wonder if my blade is getting dull. But no, that wasn't it. I was cutting right through the lock rod that's attached to the door handle, the little rod that slides down into the door in the rocker panel, and it makes a nice ding sound as it slides out and hits the floor. Luckily, I'm able just to remove the rod completely from the door assembly, clamp it together and re-weld it, then grind it to make it as good as new. It's completely invisible. It's within the door. No one will ever see it. But I know I did it, and now all of you do too. Next is the challenge of trying to get those lock rods to line up with the two small holes in the rocker panel so that the door will be locked when closed. It takes the better part of a day to make those subtle adjustments and changes to both the rod ends and to the holes, but eventually I get it done. Grinding up all the welds on the right side is next, and it's a messy, time-consuming job that I like the least. I followed that up with some PPG DP90 epoxy primer to seal up all the bare metal, and a minuscule amount of filler on the outside to blend in the repairs, and then some 2K high-build primer and paint on the right side panels. All of this was done by October 4th of 2021, but I'll talk about the paint a little bit more in a minute. I move on to the left side. The left side of the bus was in the same condition as the right side, needing floor braces, outriggers, inner and outer rockers, and the floor replaced. I also had to fabricate or purchase some of the structural ribbing on this side that connects the floor to the side panels. I get the side done pretty quickly by comparison, because the doors are a lot more complex. The final result was worth all the work, although it's a shame I'm covering it all up with flooring. By mid-October, I'm working on the driver's side floor panel. This ended up being an easy cut and replace job, and since now I have the front bumper off, I take a good look at the lower nose. Now, the lower nose metal is in way worse shape than I thought it was originally, and this is one area that again required me to purchase some new patch panels from Wolfsburg West. It's kind of a pain to get in the right place to weld it in. I have to line everything up, including these small rectangular holes that the bumper brackets need to slide into. I also had to purchase some of the smaller pieces on the inside that connect the bottom of the front nose metal to the floor and then also to the frame. And although I know that no one will ever see this repair, I do know it is structurally important. I also take this time to pull out the big dent out of the front where the spare tire once was pushing things around. I don't get it out 100% and it's not perfect, but I did weld up the 4 holes in the nose where the bracket used to be, and then did a little body work and some welding, grinding, and filler and paint, and those holes are completely gone. But I still kept a little bit of the dent in there. The dog leg on the driver's side is also a lot worse than I expected, so I bought another replacement panel from Wolfsburg West and cut that in half and welded the new half in. Once I'm done on that dog leg, well, it's probably the nicest paint on the entire vehicle, but that is not necessarily a good thing. I'll explain. By November, the weather is starting to cool off, and it's to the point where painting is not going to happen if I don't get it going now. So let's talk about the paint plan. Like I stated earlier, the plan was just to fix up most of the rust, but then I can't leave bare metal exposed or it'll just rust again. So I get a gallon of PPG Omni single stage pearl white paint and a quart of the same paint in the gray interior color, but this time we get a flattening agent mixed in to match the paint type on the inside of the bus. The problem is when I lay out the paint on the repaired panels, it's coming out too nice and too glossy, and I want it to be sort of flat and chalky like the original rest of the paint on the bus. It's just oxidized over the years. I try sanding it down a little bit with 1000 grit, but that doesn't seem to do the trick. I even go down to 600 grit, but it isn't blending in well. I still have some work to do to get this to match up all the way I want it to look, which is mostly the original paint. But I think for now I'm going to settle for coverage and rust prevention, and I can clean up the finished look down the road. I paint the cargo door bottoms, the rockers, the quarter panel repairs on both sides, and also the lower part on the nose. The new interior gray single stage, well, that covers all the work I've done on the inside, and that looks awesome. I don't have any issues there. I even touched up the back of the front seat metal, so that all looks great. Now, everywhere that I painted the pearl white on the nose and didn't fix an original chip, I need to go back and take some rusty colored red oxide primer in those little chip divots with a small touch-up paintbrush to match the rest of the bus. The whole front of the bus is freckled with these tiny little rusty little ding chips, like paint chips on it, and it really looks like it's supposed to be there because they're original. So where I had to lay some paint out and that overspray paint sort of covered up that, I put the little color of sort of a little rusty oxide back in there. I'm not looking to do a whole fake patina job. I just wanted to blend in with the new paint and the look of the old, that it's been there for half a century. I think my next step in the paint process is to try to cut and buff the entire bus and see if I can blend it in a little bit better, but I'm not that worried at this point about how the paint looks, so I'll put that off for now. Now, knowing that I'm going to be using this bus as a camper, I need to put in some sound deadening mat and insulation, which I acquired from Amazon. These are just foil-backed butyl sheets that are installed with a roller that I borrowed from my son-in-law Connor, and they are fantastic. The walls get covered with some rock wool insulation too, because it's flame retardant and water resistant, although it is a bit heavy. I go around the bus, knocking on it with my hand, and what once was a loud boom, boom, boom is just a faint thud now. I can't believe the difference. I take this time to put away all the metal tools and clean up the paint gun for the season. Hardly any of this hard work is ever going to be seen, however, because it's all getting covered up with the interior work that we will discuss on the next episode of Wilson, the VW Bus. Talk to you then. Sound effects are from Pixabay. Thanks a lot.